Hello and welcome to the Sportscast podcast with me, Liam. Today is a pre-event special. In the pre-events we will be looking forward to a particular sporting event, Tour de France, Wimbledon, Rugby World Cup, Premier League football season, where one of us will be going into a little bit more depth as to what to look forward to, who's favourites, what's going to be happening, and just try and give you a bit of an overview, a little bit of an insight if it's something that you're not usually too invested in. And hopefully you can take something away from it and hopefully become a fan of the sport. In the first pre-event special, we're going to be covering the 110th Tour de France, starting this Saturday, July 1st. If you're not too familiar with the Tour de France, it's a 21-stage event. Starts somewhere in Europe, finishes obviously in France. It consists of different stages, so you'll have really hilly stage, you'll have like mountain stage with massive inclines over sort of 20-30 kilometres. You've got sort of short time trial events. For me, probably, apart from maybe the Marathon des Sables, probably the greatest endurance event there is. 21 days of pure speed, endurance. It really does push these athletes to the absolute brink of breaking point. The favourites this year will be last year's winner, Vingegaard of Jumbo-Visma, with Pogačar, who races for the UEA Team Emirates, who won the Tour de France in 2020 and 2021, with Vingegaard in 2022. So those two have dominated for a number of years now. A couple of maybe sort of outsiders, if something was to happen with the Jumbo-Visma and Team Emirates riders, you've got Jai Hindley, who is coming off the 2022 Giro d'Italia victory. If nothing does happen to the two favourites, I think you could look at Hindley as probably a contender for a couple of stages. I think Ben O'Connor, who came fourth in 2021, he was injured last year. He got injured early on the cobbles, which is a stage that is raced literally across cobbled, bricked floor, so becomes very dusty, very bouncy. If your tyre just hits a cobble wrong, you're gone. Last year, cobbles was in the first week. This year, it's in the second week, so you might have a little bit more of a lead as a rider, so you know how to take the cobbles. You certainly don't win the Tour de France on the cobbles, but like Ben O'Connor, he lost it. He tore his I think it was his hamstring or his glutes, and that was it. That was his race over. Although going into this year's, he has got a top 5 at the World Tour race. He races with AG2R Citroën. For me this year, it's Mark Cavendish's final Tour de France, and he has the joint stage wins at 34. If he can get a decent sprint race, something a bit flatter, hopefully he could take a stage win for the outright 35. And then you've got Pinot, who I think will take a couple of stages. He always gets going, he's French. You get into sort of his areas. He's a massive fan favourite. Being a little bit unlucky, maybe just has to have the endurance to see a stage out, to follow something through. But I think this year, if he can get the rides right and pace himself, I think, and have his team around him, it's a massive thing in the Tour de France. They say that when you're in the peloton, which is the group of main riders, you have your obviously riders that try to break out and gain a lead, but your peloton is the group that ride at a time. They say in there that if you're in a bit of a chain, a bit of a sort of snake, if you like, you're probably cycling at about 50% of your capacity, which they're still riding at sort of 34 to 37 miles an hour on a flat, so they're still very, very fast. I think Ineos this year, they've got Bernal, who previously won the Tour de France. Fantastic rider, struggled with injuries. He's had a couple of crashes in training. They can keep him fit, and they've got Tom Pidcock, who raced mountain bikes in the Olympics, and he's made the transition over for road racing, and he's taken it, I think, fantastically well. I think for me this year, there'll be sort of 5, maybe 6 drivers that I think I would tip for stage wins. I think there'll be Simon Yates, you've got Lampaert, Julian Alaphilippe, who one of the senior riders, but again, always sort of comes good around the Tour de France. Fabio Jacobsen, who had a massive crash last year in the Tour de Poland, had huge surgery, restructured his face. And then Peter Sagan, again, another sort of senior rider who always comes good during the Tour de France. The Grand Depart will be the second to take place in the autonomous region of the Basque Country, which it will start in Bilbao. It previously started in St. Sebastian's in 1992. After 3 stages, the rest of the tour will actually take place in France, visiting 6 regions of France. There's 21 stages, 8 are flat, 4 are hilly, there's 8 mountain stages, 4 summit finishes, so they'll finish at the peak of a summit of different mountains. So there's going to be the Cambasque, you've got the Puy de Dôme, you've got the Grand Colombier, and there's going to be one finish at the top of Mont Blanc. There's a time trial, which is a 22.4 kilometre, and it'll be an outright sprint to that. So riders will go off one by one, so not as a group. They'll go off one by one and just post incredibly fast times during those. So these guys will cover 3,405 kilometres over 21 stages with only 2 rest days. Key stages for me: the first stage, 182 kilometre hill stage, and then the 6th stage, so just before rest day, they're going to be 145 kilometres in the mountains up Cambasque. It's a 17 kilometre at 7.3 incline. It's iconic on the Tour de France, this incline. That will probably be after those sort of first 6 stages. I think that's when you'll sort of start to see some riders maybe have a minute and a half lead over the main peloton. The 9th stage is at St. Leonard. It's again 182. It's a mediums mountain, so it'll be sort of rolling mountains. Nothing too like the 6th stage, but it'll not be a sort of flat sort of sprint that you might see like Mark Cavendish come good at. I think something like this will be where Alaphilippe will probably come good. Something a bit early where it's not too fatigued. 13th stage, it's 138 kilometre in the mountains. That's the Grand Colombier. Again, 17 kilometre incline. And I think this one would be, if Bernal for Ineos can stay fit, I think that's where he'll probably take a win. If he's not fighting outright, I think they'll go for a couple of stage wins, and I think that's where we'll see him come there. 17th stage is up Saint Gervais, which is at Mont Blanc. It's 166 kilometres, it's a high mountain, so that's going to be a huge stage for Pogačar, Vingegaard, anyone that's really, maybe Tom Pidcock that might sort of fancy his chances this year. It's going to be a huge stage for those riders to really try and just take a few minutes, just eat away any lead that anyone's got or extend anything that they've got. The 20th stage, the Belfont, which is 133 kilometre medium mountains. There's no major climbs. It's just like a rolling peak and trough for 133 kilometres. Again, they tend to do these sort of stages in sort of 4 hours or so as an average. So the speed they're carrying for that amount of time, you know, through these, I think will be, it just for me shows that it is without doubt the greatest endurance event that there is. They're the main stages. I think the winner will be the 2022-21 winner, Pogačar. I think if you was to look as an outsider, I do see Tom Pidcock as the favourite of the outsiders. Maybe you might get a Bernal or Jay Hindley, but I can't see anybody else taking anything away from Vingegaard of Jumbo-Visma and Pogačar of UAE Team Emirates. Thank you for joining us on our first pre-event special. As normal, you can get us on Twitter and Instagram at SportscarsPodUK. We'd love to hear some feedback, see if there's anything particularly you'd like us to cover, if there's anything happening that maybe we don't discuss. Reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to converse with you on socials on there. I've been Liam, and join us each week for the usual podcast.